In November 1975, Lama Yeshe stood on the steps of the Kopan Gompa and gazed into the distance, as if surveying with his mind's eye his already wide-ranging Dharma works, and said, "We need an organization to keep this together." Lama Yeshe and Lama Zopa Rinpoche had just returned from an 8.5-month round-the-world tour of 9 countries, the most extensive they were ever to make and one that had resulted in the creation of 4 new centers. What Lama wanted to keep together was a mushrooming collection of 12 centers and departments, the evolving external manifestation of his total dedication to spreading the Buddha's teaching for the benefit of all beings. Lama Yeshe summoned together several of his senior students present at the time to discuss the coordination of this rapidly growing Dharma network. He called this group the Council for the Preservation of the Mahayana Tradition, or CPMT. The larger organizational body of center directors and other divisions of Lama Yeshe's worldwide organization became known as the Foundation for the Preservation of the Mahayana Tradition, or FPMT. Lama Yeshe was born in Tibet in 1935 in the village of Tolung Dechen, just west of Lhasa, and recognized as the reincarnation of the learned abbess of a nearby nunnery. At the age of 6, he went to the great monastery of Sera in Lhasa, where an uncle who was a monk took care of him. He studied there until the Chinese occupation of Tibet in 1959, when he fled to India and was sent to the refugee camp of Buksadur in West Bengal. Lama Zopa Rinpoche was born in Nepal in 1945 in the village of Thakme, about 3 hours walk west of Namche Bazar, a village in the Khumbu region from which climbers set off for Mount Everest. At the age of about 4, he was recognized as the reincarnation of the Lauda Lama, a highly accomplished meditator who had spent the last 20 years of his life in retreat in a cave a couple of hours' walk up the mountain from Thakme. After studying for several years at a nearby monastery in 1956, Rinpoche went to Tibet on pilgrimage with his uncle. While they were at Pagri Monastery in southern Tibet, he decided to stay rather than return to Nepal. He remained there until 1959, when he eventually found his way to Buksa, where he met Lama Yeshe. At the end of the 1960s, the encounters Lama Yeshe and Lama Zopa Rinpoche had with Westerners seeking to learn about the teachings of the Buddha profoundly influenced the direction their lives will take. First, they met Zina Rachevsky, an American citizen of Russian descent, on a visit to a monastery in Darjeeling in 1967. Zina asked them to give her teachings, and they did for 9 months, after which she became a nun. At the end of that year, the Lamas and Zina moved to Nepal, where they took up residence near the great stupa of Bodhanath in Kathmandu Valley. In early 1968, the Lamas met Max Matthews, an old friend of Zena's who was to become their main benefactor over the next several years. At this time, Lama Zobo Rinpoche also reconnected with his family, who came down from Solukhumbu to meet him. Early the next year, Rinpoche made his first trip back home since going to Tibet more than 10 years earlier, and agreed to fulfill the promise made in his previous life to build a monastery at the site of the Laudo cave. In the spring of 1969, Zena took the Lamas to see an old house on a hill she had heard about beyond the fields at the back of Bauddhanath. Lama Yeshe agreed this was a good place and eventually rented it. Thus, Kapan Monastery was born. In July of 1969, Zena and the Lamas moved in, and soon after, Lama Yeshe began giving teachings. Around this time, Lama Yeshe had a medical examination which revealed that he had rheumatic heart disease, with a couple of seriously damaged heart valves. After many requests and with some reluctance, Lama Zobo Rinpoche agreed to give a meditation course. The course was attended by about 20 Western students in the spring of 1971. Courses were held twice a year for the next few years, and by the spring of 1974, there were 250 attendees. In the summer of 1974, the Lamas made their first of what would become annual teaching tours, traveling to the USA, Australia, and New Zealand. This resulted in the establishment of what would become the first of their Western Dharma centers, Chenrezig Institute in Australia. The 1975 World Tour took the Lamas to Thailand, Australia, New Zealand, the USA, England, Switzerland, and Italy. Several more centers were established, leading to Lama Yeshe's realization that they needed an organization to maintain them. The next few years followed a similar pattern. The Kapan meditation course was held in November, which was regularly attended by about 200 students. After the November course, the Lamas will travel to Bodh Gaya or Dharamsala for teachings from His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and then undertake overseas tours, which saw the establishment of more centers and an organic growth of the FPMT organization. Over the years, Lama Yeshe's health gradually worsened due to his tireless and selfless work for the sake of others and the teachings of the Buddha. In March 1984, his heart gave out and he passed away in Los Angeles. He was cremated at his California center, Vajrapani Institute. Upon the fervent request of his and Lama Yeshe's students, Lama Zobo Rinpoche assumed leadership of the FPMT, and under his peerless guidance, the organization has continued to grow. Rinpoche soon started paying more attention to Asia, and very successful centers developed in Hong Kong, Singapore, Taiwan, and Malaysia. Rinpoche also encouraged the creation of social services such as hospices and emphasized the importance of holy objects such as stupas and statues, notably the amazing Maitreya project. The FPMT continues to be guided by Lama Zopa Rinpoche, who is assisted by staff and a board of directors. Lama Yeshe's incarnation, Lama Osil, was born in Spain in 1985, studied at Serra Monastery for some time, lives in Ibiza, and now sits on the board of directors. FPMT headquarters are in Portland, Oregon, where the FPMT's first Buddhist university, Maitreya College, is based. The FPMT's quarterly Mandala magazine is also produced from there. The organization that Lama Yeshe set in motion more than 40 years ago now comprises more than 160 centers, projects, and services in over 40 countries worldwide.